The sun had barely risen over the rim of Ceres 9, casting long shadows over the abandoned spaceport. The planet's once thriving industrial complex now lay silent, overtaken by creeping vines and abandoned ships. Among the crumbling ruins, Captain Aileen Graves stood tall, her silhouette sharp against the pale, alien light. She wiped the grime from her face with the back of her hand and surveyed the remnants of what was left. Once, Ceres 9 had been the heart of the Federated Alliance's most valuable trade routes. Now, it was little more than a forgotten battlefield. Aileen had come here not for the memories of broken alliances, but for answers. The Alliance had turned its back on humanity years ago, leaving her people to rot in a galaxy that no longer cared. But today, there was a new hope, however slim it may be. The message had been simple: we remember. Aileen had found the message hidden deep within the encrypted communications of a neutral faction, a message believed to be from the mysterious resistance group that had been growing in secret for years. A group of individuals who, according to rumors, remembered the truth of what had happened during the brutal wars of betrayal. Humanity, once the proud, ambitious species that had carved a path across the stars, had been sold out, sacrificed for the political ambitions of higher powers. Every treaty had been a trap, every alliance a lie. And now, as the galaxy roiled in chaos, the memories of that betrayal were stirring. Aileen stepped forward, the gravel beneath her boots crunching in the still air. Her fingers rested on the hilt of her plasma blade, instinctively prepared for any threats lurking in the silence. She knew the truth of the Federation's treachery all too well. How they had left entire colonies to die at the hands of the Thrax. How they had betrayed entire fleets to gain the favor of alien factions. How they had sold out the human race for the sake of a fragile, dishonest peace. But despite all that, the memory of what humanity had once been fierce, unstoppable, and resilient still burned in her veins. Graves, a voice crackled over her comms. "You're not going to believe this. We've got company." She froze, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved, but she knew better than to trust the silence. The Thrax had a long reach, and they were known to use stealth ships to stalk their prey. Her crew, scattered across the galaxy and now rallying under her banner once again, needed to know the truth. But would they be able to survive the lies of the past long enough to reveal it? "Stay low," Aileen muttered into the comm, "and stay sharp. I'll take care of it." Her heart was pounding. She had never been one to shy away from danger, but the weight of the past was a burden few could understand. She'd seen the downfall of the human spirit before. The way people had once fought valiantly for freedom, only to have their wills crushed under the boots of those who saw them as expendable. "Get ready," Aileen whispered as she moved into the shadows of an abandoned warehouse. She could feel the cold touch of metal against her fingers as she adjusted the grip on her blade, her eyes darting to the flicker of movement in the distance. A blast of energy struck the side of the building, sending a shockwave through the ground. The ship had landed. It was close. She slipped inside, moving soundlessly, her pulse steady despite the tension. If it was the Thrax, they wouldn't waste time. They would come in guns blazing, searching for anyone who might oppose them. Aileen reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out a small data cube. She had to send a message to her people, to remind them that humanity's fight wasn't over, and that the lies that had been forced on them could still be undone. As the distant hum of approaching footsteps echoed through the structure, Aileen's mind raced. The Thrax were no longer just a physical enemy. They were part of the web of lies that had ensnared humanity, part of the reason why her people had forgotten what it meant to fight for freedom. Aileen clenched her teeth. Today, that fight would begin anew. She stepped into the open, her blade ready. The metallic clang of boots on metal grew louder. She could see the silhouette of the first Thrax soldier round the corner, its tall, grotesque form illuminated by the glow of the broken-down machinery. This was it. The fight for humanity's freedom had begun, and it would be the Thrax, the Federation, and the rest of the galaxy who would remember the truth of who they had betrayed. The ground shook as the first shots rang out, and the battle for Ceres 9 and for the truth began. The first shot barely missed Eileen's shoulder, but she had already anticipated the move. With a swift motion, she dropped low and slid to the side, her plasma blade singing through the air as she cut down the Thrax soldier's weapon before it could be raised. The creature let out a high-pitched screech, disintegrating into a smoldering heap of blackened armor and twisted flesh. She barely had time to register the success before another soldier appeared from the shadows, its mandibles clicking menacingly. This one was faster. The Thrax soldiers were known for their unnatural speed and strength, and their biology was even more alien than their appearance, a grotesque fusion of insectoid and reptilian features, encased in heavy armor that protected them like a second skin. Eileen gritted her teeth and raised her blade once more, feeling the familiar weight in her hand as the weapon hummed with the heat of impending destruction. "Focus, Graves," she muttered to herself. The last thing she needed right now was to get lost in the heat of the battle. She had bigger plans than just surviving. The Thrax soldier lunged, its claws aimed for her throat. Eileen spun on her heel, narrowly dodging a strike, and countered with a well-timed slash. Her blade tore through the armor with ease, sending sparks flying and the creature stumbling backward. It was only a temporary victory. The Thrax weren't like any other enemy she'd faced. They didn't give up, and they didn't retreat. Their hive mentality meant they had only one goal: destroy the threat. And now that threat was her. She was still absorbing the weight of everything that had led her here. It had all started when the Federation had turned its back on humanity, pushing them into the darkest corners of the galaxy and leaving them to be hunted by the very species they once allied with. The treaties, the supposed peace, they were all lies. Everything had been a manipulation to strengthen the Federation's grip over the galaxy, while humanity was left to bleed. And now the truth was awakening. Eileen didn't hesitate. She raised her hand, signaling her team through the comms. "All teams, engage. Don't let them get to the data." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it now, something deeper that had been building ever since she'd started this mission. The message must reach the Federation. She watched as her crew, scattered across the planet's surface, responded. The sounds of combat erupted from different directions as they coordinated the assault, keeping the Thrax off balance. But the battle wasn't the endgame. It was only the beginning. Eileen ducked behind a wrecked freighter for cover as a volley of plasma bolts burned into the ground nearby. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She thought back to the encrypted message she'd received. The Resistance was more than just a group of rebels. They were the last remaining remnants of humanity's lost legacy, the ones who remembered the truth. A truth that could topple the Federation and shatter the control the galaxy had over them. Her thoughts were interrupted by the low growl of more Thrax soldiers closing in. They were organized now, responding to the threat with chilling precision. This wasn't a typical raid. This was an ambush. Someone had known she was coming. A cold realization struck her like a blow to the chest. This wasn't just about the Thrax. The Federation had eyes everywhere. The data she had found, the information they'd been searching for, had led them right into the trap. The Resistance group had been infiltrated, compromised. The message wasn't just a warning, it was a countdown. They knew what was coming, and the Federation was ready for it. A sharp whine echoed through the air, followed by the sound of a ship's engines powering up. Eileen's heart sank. They were trying to escape. "No, you don't," she hissed under her breath. Her instincts kicked in as she leapt from her cover, charging toward the hangar where she had seen the ship land earlier. The Thrax were closing in fast, but Eileen was faster. She dashed past the wreckage, her boots pounding the cracked concrete as the enemy fired behind her. She didn't dare look back. She had only one shot at this. The hangar was large, the darkened space filled with the twisted remains of long-abandoned vessels. At the far end, a sleek, black ship hovered in place, its engines glowing ominously in the low light. Eileen was only a few meters away when she heard the unmistakable click of a rifle charging. A low, raspy voice filled the air. "Don't move, Graves." She froze. A familiar figure stepped from the shadows, a tall, gaunt man with cold eyes and a Federation military insignia on his uniform. Captain Elias Moore, a ghost from her past. The man who had been her mentor. The man who had betrayed her, who had betrayed all of humanity. "You always were good at getting into trouble, Eileen," he said, his voice a perfect mix of mockery and contempt. Eileen's pulse quickened. The Federation wasn't just hunting them, they were orchestrating every move. Elias Moore was just the beginning. They remembered. But it was too late to stop them now. Captain Elias Moore's gaze never wavered as he leveled his rifle at Eileen, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. His tall, angular frame was encased in the polished black armor of the Federation's elite forces. The symbol on his chest gleamed in the dim light of the hangar, the same insignia that had once filled her with pride. But that had been years ago, before the betrayal, before the lies had shattered everything she believed in. "Did you think we'd let you uncover the truth, Eileen?" Moore's voice was low and cold, the same voice she had once trusted. "The Federation isn't in the business of letting the weak survive. Humanity's survival requires control, order, not the chaos you're about to unleash." Eileen's mind raced, but her eyes stayed locked on Moore's. The sound of her crew battling in the distance faded into the background. She could hear the hum of the ship's engines behind her, the quiet hiss of a vacuum seal being broken as it readied to take off. Every moment counted. Her fingers curled around the handle of her plasma blade, but she made no move. "Not yet. You were never one of them, Moore," she said, her voice steady, though a tight knot formed in her chest. "You were one of us, once. We fought side by side. You knew what it meant to fight for humanity." Moore's lips curled into a smile, but it was empty, hollow. "I knew what it meant to fight for control, Graves," he sneered. "You and your misguided idealism. You think you can change anything? The galaxy is in chaos, and the Federation is the only thing holding it together. If you'd only stayed out of this, you could have had a future. You could have lived in peace." Eileen's grip tightened on the plasma blade. Moore didn't understand. He never had. The Federation's peace was built on the suffering of millions, on broken treaties and sold-out human lives. Peace had never been an option for her people, not while the Federation held them in chains. "I never asked for peace," Eileen said, her voice hardening. "I asked for justice. And you sold us out, Elias. You sold out everyone." Moore's expression faltered for just a moment, the briefest flicker of something. Regret, maybe? But it was gone before she could pinpoint it. The moment passed, and his gun was back up, aimed directly at her chest. "You're wasting your time," Moore said, his voice thick with finality. "Even if you somehow manage to get this information out, even if you manage to spark some little rebellion somewhere, it won't matter. You've seen the truth now, Eileen. The Federation's reach is far beyond what you can comprehend. You won't survive this." The ship's engines roared louder behind her. She had to make her move, but she had no clear path. Eileen's mind was a battlefield, too. She had always known Moore to be ruthless, but seeing him like this, standing there, fully aligned with the very system that had betrayed humanity, was a blow she hadn't anticipated. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice unwavering. "The people who truly hold power won't just fade into the shadows, Elias. They can't afford to. The lies they've built their empire on are already crumbling. People remember what they did to us. The truth's already out there." Moore's eyes narrowed, and the faintest flicker of something that almost resembled panic flashed across his face. "Don't speak like you know the game, Graves," he growled. "You're playing checkers when the Federation is playing chess. And they've already planned 10 moves ahead." Eileen didn't have time to argue with him. The sound of footsteps, too many to count, echoed in the distance. More Federation soldiers. She didn't know how much longer she could stall. Without warning, she darted to the side, her blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Moore barely had time to react before she closed the gap, bringing her weapon down hard on his rifle, knocking it from his hands. She used the momentum to roll away, coming up with a blinding speed that she knew would throw him off balance. "You always underestimate people, Elias," she said, her voice low but deadly. Moore was on his feet in an instant, But the brief confusion allowed Aileen to close the gap again. This time, she wasn't holding back. She rushed forward, her blade a streak of light, catching him across the chest. His armor wasn't enough to stop her strike, and he staggered back with a gasp, blood seeping through the cracks in his armor. He swore under his breath, pain twisting his features. "You'll never get away with this," he spat, his voice full of venom. "That's not for you to decide," Aileen replied, her breath steady. "The fight for humanity's future isn't yours to win, more." Before he could recover, she grabbed him by the collar of his uniform and pushed him against the hull of the ship. His eyes were full of hatred, but there was something else now, something that looked like fear. The sound of the approaching soldiers was unmistakable. Aileen knew she couldn't waste any more time. She could kill more now, but it wouldn't change the larger fight ahead. She threw him to the ground and dashed toward the ship, her blade still humming in her hand as she moved. The ship's engines were at full throttle now, and the doors to the cockpit were already closing. She wasn't sure if her crew had managed to escape the ambush or if they were waiting for her, but she couldn't take that chance. With one last look at Moore, she sprinted toward the controls. "You can't run from this," he shouted, crawling toward her. But Aileen didn't stop. She was already past him, already thinking of the next move, the next battle. Moore's words were hollow now. They no longer held any power over her. Humanity had never been about peace. It had been about survival. And now it would fight to reclaim its future. As the ship's engines roared to life, Aileen Graves left Soares 9 behind, taking one last look at the shattered legacy of her people before she broke through the atmosphere. The war had only just begun. The stars stretched out before Aileen as she piloted the sleek ship into the blackness of space. The hum of the engines was steady beneath her, the vibrations of the vessel a constant reminder of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Her fingers danced over the console, bringing up the encrypted message that had started it all. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she reread the coordinates once more. If they were right, if the message was truly from the Resistance, it would lead her to a hidden base, the last remnant of humanity's resistance against the Federation's iron grip. And there, they would find the key to exposing the lies that had betrayed them all. Aileen didn't know who could still be trusted, not anymore. The Federation had eyes everywhere. The more she learned, the more she realized how deeply their influence had penetrated into every corner of the galaxy. The high-ranking officials, the alien factions, the so-called neutral systems, they were all in on it, part of a delicate network of deceit woven so tightly it was almost impossible to discern friend from foe. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the cold expanse of space wash over her. The betrayal still stung. The betrayal by Moore, the betrayal by the Federation, and even the betrayal of the very people she had once thought she could trust. Her mind flickered to the faces of her crew, scattered across the galaxy in hiding. They were counting on her. The quiet beep of her communicator pulled her from her thoughts. "Captain Graves," came the voice of Lieutenant Nia Voss, her most trusted officer. "We've received confirmation on the data you secured. It's real. The Resistance is alive, and it's ready to fight." Eileen's pulse quickened. "Where are they, Nia?" "We're still tracking the signal, but the coordinates point to the Andromeda sector. It's deep in Federation-controlled space. Getting there will be a nightmare. We'll need to move carefully." Aileen nodded, her resolve hardening. "Understood. We'll rendezvous with the fleet in the Andromeda sector. Get the crew ready for a long haul." "Yes, Captain," Nia replied, her voice steady, but Aileen could hear the underlying tension. They both knew how dangerous this was. The Federation wouldn't just let them slip through unnoticed. The communicator clicked off, and Aileen was left alone with her thoughts again. She checked the ship's status, noting the proximity to the Andromeda sector. The journey ahead would take time, but it wasn't the distance that concerned her. It was the web of lies that had been spun so perfectly around them. The message had been a warning, yes, but it had also been a call to action. Humanity had been living in the dark, unaware of the forces working against them. They had been used as pawns in a game much larger than any of them had understood. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for the truth. The ship's engines hummed louder as she adjusted course. As they left the outer rim of Sori's IX's system, Eileen's thoughts returned to the Resistance. The Resistance, they were more than just rebels. They were the remnants of humanity's once proud spirit. The ones who had seen the betrayal firsthand, who had never accepted the Federation's false peace. They were the key to unraveling the Federation's lies, and perhaps to breaking their hold on the galaxy. Aileen sat back in the captain's chair, gazing out into the infinite void ahead. She had no illusions about what would happen once they reached the Andromeda sector. The Federation would already be waiting. She had expected that. What she hadn't expected was the silence that had settled over her since the confrontation with Moore. A silence that spoke of a deeper, more insidious truth. The Federation's control wasn't just political. It ran deeper. It had infiltrated every facet of life, every structure of power. Even the minds of those she had once considered allies were now tainted by it. Her thoughts were interrupted as the ship's communications panel beeped again. She leaned forward, studying the incoming transmission. It was another encrypted message, this one from a hidden source. She hesitated for only a moment before she opened it. The text on the screen was short but cryptic. The Federation's grip runs deeper than you realize. You've only seen the surface. Meet us at the Callus Rift. We'll show you the rest. The message sent a chill down her spine. The Callus Rift. A dangerous, uncharted region of space, filled with black holes and electromagnetic storms. It was a place known for swallowing ships whole, where the laws of physics themselves seemed to bend and break. Why there? What was hidden in the rift that was worth risking everything? Eileen's heart raced. She wasn't sure whether to be excited or terrified. The Federation's lies were deep and far-reaching, but there was something more, something they were keeping hidden, something the Resistance wanted her to see. Aileen knew that going to the Callus Rift was reckless. She knew that even if it wasn't a trap, the risks were almost insurmountable. But she couldn't ignore it. Not now. Not with everything that was at stake. She tapped her communicator again, this time to Nia. Nia, change of plans. We're heading to the Callus Rift first. Captain, are you sure about this? The Rift is dangerous. It's Federation territory. We don't even know if... I know, Nia, Aileen interrupted. But we've been kept in the dark for too long. This is our chance to uncover the truth. We'll take the risk. Prepare the crew. I'll send out the coordinates now. She cut the transmission before Nia could argue further, then input the new course. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Aileen couldn't shake the feeling that the Callus Rift would be the place where everything would change. If they could survive it, they would finally see the full scope of the Federation's deception, and hopefully find the key to destroying it. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with dangers both known and unknown. But Eileen's resolve was unshakable. There was no going back now. The Federation had tried to erase humanity's legacy. But now, with every step forward, they were waking up a force that couldn't be contained. The truth would come to light, no matter the cost. And soon, the Federation would have no place to hide. The ship shuddered as it broke through the boundary of the Andromeda sector. The stars beyond were blotted out by the oppressive darkness of the Callus Rift, a vast, chaotic region of space where light itself seemed to falter, swallowed by gravitational anomalies and rogue black holes. It was a place where ships often disappeared without a trace, their signals lost to the wild eddies of electromagnetic storms that warp time and space. Aileen Graves stood at the helm, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. The cold hum of the ship's systems was a constant companion, and every warning light on the console seemed to pulse with a warning of imminent danger. But the message had been clear. The Resistance wanted to meet at the Callus Rift. If she wanted the truth, she had to risk the journey. The stars ahead blinked in and out of view, a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Aileen could feel the ship groan under the pressure, as if the very fabric of space was pushing back against their intrusion into this forbidden space. Nia, Aileen called over the comms. her voice steady despite the rising tension. "How's the navigation?" Nia's voice came through, distorted slightly by the interference from the rift's electromagnetic pulses. "We're holding steady for now, Captain. The rift's interference is strong, but we've got the systems calibrated. It's gonna get rough, though. We've got at least an hour before we hit the core of the rift's gravity wells." "Understood. Keep the engines primed," Aileen replied, her gaze fixed on the void ahead. She knew they were walking a razor-thin line between survival and destruction. But she also knew they didn't have the luxury of hesitation. In the back of her mind, something told her that the resistance had brought them here for more than just the truth. They were walking straight into the heart of something dangerous. The Callus Rift wasn't just a graveyard for ships. It was a place where the Federation had likely buried its darkest secrets. And the fact that they were drawing near now made Eileen's pulse quicken. She was deep in thought when the ship's alarms began to blare. It was a familiar sound, the shrill warning that something was off, something was wrong. The gravitational pull of a nearby black hole had shifted. "Hold on," Aileen barked, slamming her hand down on the control panel to stabilize the ship. The ship jerked violently, throwing her body against the restraints. She felt a brief, dizzying pull in her gut as the black hole's gravity field clawed at them. The ship's engines roared as the crew scrambled to compensate for the shift. Panels flashed with warnings, and the whine of the engine straining to hold their position reverberated through the vessel. Nia's voice crackled through again, this time more urgent. "Captain, we've got a rogue ship on sensors. It's a Federation-class vessel, and it's on an intercept course. It's fast. We're not going to outrun it in here." Eileen's mind went cold. They had been expecting trouble, but this was faster than she'd anticipated. The Federation had found them, or rather, they'd been waiting for them. "Engage evasive maneuvers," she ordered sharply, her fingers flying over the console to adjust their trajectory. She glanced over at the holographic map, noting the proximity of the black holes and the erratic patterns of the rift's spatial anomalies. They couldn't afford a direct confrontation in this environment, especially with the Federation closing in. "Captain," Nia's voice again, "they're locking onto our signal. We need to make it to the rendezvous point now, or we'll be sitting ducks." Eileen's eyes darted to the coordinates on her screen. The location was close, dangerously close. The Federation ship was too fast, though, and its weapons were more advanced than anything her crew had at their disposal. "We're not running," Aileen said, her voice cool. "Take us in. We fight in the rift." The crew was silent, aware of the gravity of the situation. They had known the risks when they set out, but now it was no longer just about finding the truth. It was about surviving the coming storm and bringing the fight to the Federation. The ship lurched again, this time more violently as the gravitational forces of a nearby black hole made their presence known. Eileen's heart raced as she maneuvered the ship, expertly dodging the swarming electromagnetic flares and dark energy clouds that threatened to tear them apart. The Federation vessel was close now. Through the viewport, Aileen could see the faint silhouette of the ship, a sleek predator in the dark expanse. They were about to enter the heart of the rift, where space itself seemed to warp and pulse like the breath of some great beast. "Deploy the decoys," Aileen ordered, her eyes narrowing as she set the ship on a sharp course that would push them toward the rendezvous point. The decoys, small drones capable of emitting powerful electromagnetic pulses, would create a false trail for the Federation ship to follow, buying them some time to slip through. The ship lurched again, and for a split second, Aileen thought they might not make it. She could feel the ship straining under the pressure, could see the faint glow of the Federation ship's weapons charging. "We've got incoming." Nia's voice came, sharp and panicked. But then, as though the void itself had come alive to protect them, the ship bucked violently once more, this time in their favor. A massive pulse of energy from one of the rift's black holes erupted, sending both ships spiraling in opposite directions. The Federation ship was knocked off course, its trajectory destabilized by the shockwave. Aileen didn't waste a moment. Now, full throttle toward the rendezvous point. The ship rocketed forward, its engines screaming as they pushed through the distorted space of the rift. The gravitational forces were unbearable, but they held together. They had no choice but to ride the chaos, trusting that the stars, and the rebels waiting ahead, would be there to catch them. The ship's systems flashed a warning, rift core, proximity alert. Just ahead, a massive anomaly loomed, a swirling vortex of energy at the heart of the callous rift. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, as if it was alive, waiting. Brace for impact. Aileen shouted as they plunged into the heart of the rift, the walls of space and time folding in on themselves. The Federation ship had been left behind, for now, but they weren't safe yet. The ship shook violently as they crossed into the heart of the anomaly, and Aileen braced herself for whatever came next. The rendezvous point was close. The truth was close. And the battle for humanity's future was just beginning. The ship groaned as it plunged deeper into the heart of the callous rift, the once pristine exterior now shaking under the strain of forces no human vessel was ever meant to withstand. Eileen's hands flew over the controls, guiding the ship through the maddening twists and turns of warp space. It felt like time itself had become fluid here, as though moments stretched and contracted at will, leaving her disoriented and struggling to find her bearings. "Hold together," she whispered under her breath, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to the ship or herself. The warning lights on the console blinked erratically, and the ship's systems began to overheat as they neared the core of the anomaly. The gravitational pulses from the black holes were becoming more intense, and they were approaching the heart of the rift at breakneck speed. Every moment felt like an eternity. "Captain," Nia's voice came through again, her voice tinged with concern. "We're almost at the rendezvous point. We've got a fleet of ships waiting for us, but they're outside the rift's gravity wells. We're not sure how much longer we can hold the course without risking total systems failure." "Understood," Aileen responded, her mind already racing ahead. She knew what had to be done. The rift was no place for hesitation. "Prepare to disengage the shields as soon as we enter the exit point. We'll need to be quick. Let's hope the resistance is ready." The ship shuddered again, and this time the tremors were far worse. Aileen clenched her jaw as the display flickered. The callous rift wasn't just a place of spatial anomalies. It was an archive, a tomb of long-buried secrets, and it seemed to be fighting them every step of the way. "Captain," Nia shouted over the growing roar of the ship's engines. "The Federation ship is back on us. They've adapted to the rift's anomalies. They're not far behind." Aileen didn't have time to process the implications of that. If the Federation ship had found its way back to them, they were running out of time. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about everything they had fought for, everything they'd uncovered. The future of humanity was riding on this final, desperate sprint. "Get us to the rendezvous point, now," Aileen barked. Her hands moved instinctively, adjusting the ship's trajectory one final time. The rift's heart was near, a swirling vortex of chaos. It wasn't just a black hole. It was a nexus of power, a place where secrets had been hidden for centuries. And then, just as it seemed like they couldn't push any further, the ship burst through the event horizon of the anomaly. The world outside the viewport changed in an instant. The disorienting shift from chaos to calm was overwhelming. The blackness of the rift faded away, replaced by the cold, infinite stars of space. They had made it. Full stop. Aileen shouted as the ship settled into the empty void beyond the rift. Before them, a fleet of ships appeared from the darkness, their hulls dark and unmarked, unmistakably the Resistance's fleet. A dozen vessels, each unique in design, hovered silently in the void, waiting. The silence between them was deafening, and for the first time in a long while, Aileen allowed herself a moment of relief. "Captain Graves," came a voice over the comms. It was deep and gravelly, unmistakably the voice of someone who had seen too many battles. "I'm Commander Yarrick. You're right on time. We've been watching your progress." Aileen exhaled, her fingers still trembling. "We didn't have a choice, Commander. We need your help. The Federation." "We know," Yarrick interrupted. "We know all about the Federation, Captain. What you've uncovered, it's bigger than any of us could have imagined." Eileen's breath caught. "What do you mean? What's bigger?" Jarek's voice grew colder. The Federation didn't just control humanity. They controlled everyone. And the truth you're looking for, it's in the heart of the rift. What's inside this place, Captain, is the core of their entire operation. The Federation's true power, the one they never wanted us to see, is hidden here. Eileen's heart pounded. But how? I thought this was just a safe haven for the Resistance. This is more than a safe haven, Yarrick said grimly. It's the last place they'll ever look. The heart of the Federation's darkest secret is right beneath us. Follow me, Captain. I'll show you the truth. Eileen turned toward Nia, her eyes intense. Set course for the center of the fleet. We're going to end this, once and for all. The ship hummed beneath her as they maneuvered toward the lead vessel. There, within its dark hull, was something far more dangerous than Eileen had ever anticipated. The Federation's empire wasn't just built on power and deception. It had been built on something far older, something far more ancient. And it was buried deep in the heart of the Callous Rift. Commander Yarrick led them to a vast underground facility within one of the Resistance ships, its corridors winding like a labyrinth, designed to keep out intruders, and even to hide the most dangerous of secrets. Eileen felt a chill run down her spine as they entered the final chamber. It was enormous, a room that felt like it was carved into the very bones of the universe itself. In the center of the room stood a massive object, an ancient device, covered in alien markings, pulsing with energy. This, Yarrick said, his voice low, is the key to the Federation's control. It isn't just a political regime, Captain. The Federation was built on the use of this, an ancient power source that allows them to manipulate time, space, and even minds. They've used it to control every aspect of humanity's history. Eileen stared at the device, her mind reeling. So it's true. They've been manipulating everything. The war, the treaties, the alliances. Yes, Yarrick replied. Everything. Humanity's history. Our rise, our fall, our wars, our peace. All shaped by this. It's what gave them power. Eileen's heart pounded in her chest. It wasn't just about fighting for humanity's future anymore. It was about reclaiming their past, rewriting it. The Federation had stolen that from them. How do we destroy it? Eileen asked, her voice hard with resolve. Yarrick smiled grimly. We don't just destroy it, Captain. We use it. The Resistance has a plan. With this, we can take back control, not just of the Federation, but of our own future. Eileen's eyes glinted with newfound purpose. She had been fighting for humanity's survival. Now, she would fight to reclaim their legacy, to take back what was rightfully theirs. The battle was far from over.